Welcome back to another sinister broadcast with your spooky host with the most, Raz. Hello everyone, welcome back to another sinister broadcast. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight we have brand new commercials, brand new stories, and brand new mini documentaries for you to enjoy. And a nice big surprise at the end. So, another quick reminder, if you write stories and would like to be featured on the channel, by all means, please get in contact with me. And with that, let's get on with the show. Friends, neighbors, and future customers, when the inevitable knocks politely on your door, you'll want a coffin from Honest Earl's Budget Burial Barn. That's right, I got coffins so comfortable people are dying to get in them. Choose from our popular models, the Forever Nap Deluxe, featuring satin lining, solid brass handles, and a lid that closes with confidence. Or for the thrifty shopper, the Economy Eternal Crate, made from real wood harvested from trees that were definitely alive. And every coffin comes with Earl's Peace of Mind Promise. If you're not satisfied, you can always return it. Though historically, hasn't happened much. Come on down today. Honest Earl's Budget Burial Barn. Located just past the cemetery. Convenient for repeat business. Not responsible for vampires, restless spirits, or relatives arguing over inheritance. Attention motorists of the living world! Are you tired of ordinary transport that behaves predictably? Because friend, I sure am. Then crawl on down to Phantom Motors, the nation's only fully haunted dealership for cars, boats, and motorcycles. Every vehicle comes with its own certified supernatural occupant. Why, friend, are you looking for a car with personality? Take home the 1938 Spectre sedan. Features include steering that occasionally corrects itself, a horn that honks whenever somebody mentions taxes, a rear-view mirror that sometimes shows passengers you didn't pick up. But wait, do you prefer water travel? Then behold the Ghostway 2000 fishing boat, guaranteed to catch fish, seaweed, and the lingering spirits of drowned sailors. And for the thrill seekers, the Wailing Phantom motorcycle. It reaches speed so fast the rider may briefly leave the mortal plane. Ha! And remember our famous afterlife guarantee. If the ghost inside your vehicle refuses to cooperate, we'll replace it with a different ghost for free. Phantom Motors, where every ride comes with a passenger from beyond. Not responsible for spectral hitchhikers, sun and cold spots, or boats sailing themselves at midnight. Has a loved one passed on to the great beyond? Wish they'd come back for just one more conversation? Or maybe to mow the lawn? Then visit Professor Wormwood's Reanimation Service.
Yes, through the miracle of questionable science, I can bring back your dearly departed back to life.
Using his patented electro-necro-revival method.
Just apply lighting, mysterious chemicals, and a healthy disregard for nature.
In minutes, your loved ones will be walking again, groaning again, possibly remembering where you left the car keys.
And they will be stronger than ever.
Stronger? Hungrier?
Much, much hungrier.
But don't worry. Every reanimation comes with complimentary helmet and leash.
And remember our zombie assurance policy. If your resurrected relative develops a taste for human brains,
we'll offer a 10% discount on your next resurrection.
Science marches forward.
Sometimes very slowly, with arms extended. Not liable for shambling, biting, graveyard wanderings, or community panic. The vent started talking 3 nights ago. Now, before you panic, before you shut the radio off and call a priest or a plumber, let me clarify something. I know vents don't talk. I'm insane. That's actually on the paperwork. Patient file says so. Very official. Very stamped. Very depressing font. But it's saying people notice things. That's why they lock us away. Because if we start talking about the things we notice, well, then people might start listening. And that would be inconvenient. The vent is above my head. Small metal grate. 4 rusty screws. Crooked. Like someone tried to take it off once and changed their mind. Smart person. Brave person. Alive person. Probably. First I heard scratching. Tiny. Like fingernails dragging across metal. I assumed it was a rat. Rats are honest creatures. They steal your food. They stare at you with little judgmental eyes. But they don't whisper. Hello. That's what the vent said. Just that. Hello. Like someone tapping a microphone, testing the air, seeing if anyone was listening. Now, the sane thing to do would be ignore it. Roll over. Go to sleep. Dream about beaches. Or pancakes. Or being legally declared unstable by 3 men in identical sweaters. But I didn't ignore it. Because the voice said something next. Something interesting. Something very personal. Daniel. That was my name. Before the walls. Before the doctors. Before the helpful pills that make my dreams taste like aluminum. Daniel Carter. Now I'm patient 1439.
Much catchier. Rolls off the tongue. 1439. 1439.
Great for business cards. So I sat up very slowly. Because if a vent knows your name, you don't make sudden movements.
That's how the vents win.
Then the voice said something strange. Raz.
Now hold on. That's not my name. That's ridiculous. Raz is the name of that fellow on the radio. The one telling all those stories. You know him.
Smooth voice. Calm delivery.
Probably owns several sweaters that aren't hospital property. But the vent insisted. Raz. You're Raz.
No. That's not possible. Raz reads stories. Raz talks to people. Raz has listeners. Raz probably eats soup from bowls that aren't chained to furniture. And then the voice in the vent said something that made my blood run cold. I can hear them.
Hear who?
The listeners.
That's impossible. There are no listeners here. Just walls, pillows,
a door that locks from the outside, and occasionally a nurse named Linda who smells like hand sanitizer and existential disappointment. But the voice kept insisting. It kept talking, night after night, asking questions, learning things, repeating words I said like a parrot. A very unsettling parrot. A metal parrot. A vent parrot.
Did you know parrots live a very long time? Some 80 years. Imagine that. 80 years of a bird remembering every embarrassing thing you've ever said. Hello, Daniel. Hello, Daniel. Why are you crying, Daniel? Why are you eating soup again, Daniel?
Sorry. Lost my train of thought. Happens a lot. Trains aren't allowed in the asylum anymore. Safety issue. Anyway, last night the voice said something new. Something exciting. Something absolutely horrifying. I found another vent. Another vent. On the other side of my wall. Inside the padding. Where there shouldn't be one. And then said this. I can see you. Now I check the wall. There's nothing there. Just padding. Soft, thick, quiet.
But something breathes back. Right through the wall. Slow, patient waiting.
So if you're listening tonight, and you happen to be sitting near a vent, maybe in your car, maybe in your bedroom, maybe right next to your radio, do me a small favor. Lean a little closer and listen. Because if you hear scratching, don't worry. It's probably just a rat. But if the vent says your name, well, at least now you know where it learned it from. After all, I've been talking to you this whole time. Now, let's begin. The Watcher in the Attic, inspired by the Gothic dread of Edgar Allan Poe. The house on Willow Street had been empty for years. No one in the town could quite remember when the last family had lived there. The shutters had long since faded into a grayish rot, and the porch leaned slightly toward the earth as if the structure itself had grown weary of standing. Yet, for reasons I cannot fully explain, I decided to rent it. The landlord offered the property at an absurdly low price. He seemed relieved, almost eager, to hand over the keys. Only later did I understand why. The first night passed without incident. The second night did not. It began with a sound above my bedroom ceiling. At first it was faint, little more than the creaking of old wood shifting in the cold night air. But as the hours passed, the noise grew louder. Footsteps, slow, measured. Someone, or something, was walking in the attic. Now, this would not have frightened me under ordinary circumstances. Old houses make noise. Rats and raccoons find their way into forgotten spaces. But there was something terribly wrong with the rhythm of those steps. They were too deliberate, too human. The following morning I inspected the attic. It was empty. Dust covered everything in a thick, undisturbed layer. No footprints. No sign that anyone had entered the space in years. Yet that night, the footsteps returned. This time they did not remain above me. They moved, back and forth across the ceiling. And then, they stopped directly above my bed. I lay frozen beneath the blankets, listening, waiting. For nearly an hour, nothing happened. Then I heard something else. Scratching. Slow, dragging scratches across the wood, as though fingernails were slowly carving their way through the boards. Days passed. The sounds continued every night. I stopped sleeping. I stopped leaving the house. Instead, I listened. Because gradually, I began to realize something horrifying. The footsteps were coming closer. The scratching had begun directly above my room, but each night, it moved farther along the ceiling. Night after night, the unseen thing seemed to be digging its way through the attic floor, toward me, toward my bed. On the 12th night, the scratching stopped. For several long minutes, there was nothing but silence. Then I heard the sound of wood breaking. A thin crack appeared in the ceiling. Dust drifted down slowly through the air. And from that crack, something began to look down at me. I cannot describe it. I will not. Because now, as I write this, I can hear the footsteps again above my ceiling. The house I now live in does not have an attic. The Man Who Returned, inspired by the eerie realism of Ambrose Bierce. The town believed Thomas Harrow had died. The doctor confirmed it. The priest performed the rites, and the townspeople carried his coffin to the cemetery at the edge of the hill. It was a quiet funeral. Thomas had not been well liked. He lived alone and rarely spoke to anyone. But death, even for an unpleasant man, deserves company. 3 days later, Thomas Harrow returned home. At first, no one noticed. But Miss Callahan, who lives across the street, swore she saw him standing in the doorway of his house late one evening, watching the street. She told the neighbors. They laughed it off, until someone else saw him too. The sightings continued. Several townspeople claimed to see Thomas walking through the streets at night. But something about him was terribly wrong. He never spoke. He never entered any building. And he only appeared after midnight. One man finally gathered the courage to approach him. He called out Thomas's name. The figure turned slowly, and the man immediately ran, because the face staring back at him was not the face of a living man. The next morning, the town gathered at the cemetery. They dug up Thomas Harrow's grave. The coffin inside had been opened from within, the lid splintered, the interior scratched to pieces, but the body was gone. To this day, no one knows what truly happened. But on certain nights, long after midnight, some residents claim they see a man standing silently in the street, watching the town that buried him, waiting. The Whispering Forest. In the far north of Maine, there are forests so dense that sunlight barely reaches the ground. Hunters and hikers pass through them every year without incident. But there is one section of the forest the locals avoid entirely. They call it the Hollow. My friend Daniel and I entered the forest on a late October afternoon. We were mapping an old logging trail that had disappeared from modern charts. The air inside the woods felt different. There was no wind, no birds, no sounds except our own footsteps crunching against fallen leaves. Daniel stopped walking. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. At first I heard nothing. Then it came again. A voice, very faint, from somewhere deep in the forest. We assumed it was another hiker. But the voice didn't sound like speech. It sounded like whispering. Soft murmuring voices layered together like distant echoes. And the strangest part, they seemed to be coming from every direction at once. Daniel laughed nervously and called out, "Hello?" The whispers stopped. The silence that followed was worse. Then, slowly, the voices returned. Only now, they were closer. Much closer. As we continued deeper into the woods, the whispers grew louder. Neither of us could understand the words, but we both felt certain of something. They were speaking to us, watching us, guiding us. Without realizing it, we had wandered far from the trail, and the forest had grown strangely dark. Then Daniel grabbed my arm. "Look!" Ahead of us stood a clearing, but there were no trees inside it. Just a perfectly round patch of earth, surrounded by towering forest. And inside that circle, the whispers became deafening. Hundreds of voices. Thousands. All speaking at once. Daniel ran. I followed. We did not stop until we reached the road, miles away. Years later, we returned with maps to find the clearing again. But it wasn't there. The forest was solid, unbroken, as though the place had never existed. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear those whispers. Not in the woods, inside my own house, just beyond the edge of hearing, waiting. The Haunting of the Palmer House. In the quiet hills of western Massachusetts sits an old colonial building that locals claim never truly sleeps. The structure is known today as the Palmer House Hotel. It has stood in the small village of Saundersville since the early 1700s, long before electricity or paved roads. The building began its life as a stagecoach inn, welcoming weary travelers passing through the forests of New England. But from its earliest days, the house carried whispers of tragedy. According to local history, the innkeeper's wife, a woman remembered only in fragments of town records, was accused of witchcraft during the colonial era. Whether the accusation was born from fear, superstition, or simple cruelty is impossible to know. But the punishment was swift. Legend says she was dragged from the property by an angry mob and hanged in a nearby tree. Her life ended under the same dark suspicions that claimed so many others during the fearful years of colonial America. Her body was buried nearby, and from that day forward, strange things were said to happen inside of the inn. For decades, travelers reported footsteps echoing through empty hallways, doors opening and closing on their own, and cold drafts that seemed to follow them from room to room. But it wasn't until the 19th century that the haunting truly began to take shape. Guests began reporting the presence of a woman dressed in colonial clothing, wandering the halls late at night. She never spoke. She never approached anyone. She simply appeared at the end of corridors and then vanished. Some claimed to smell burning wood and herbs when she appeared, the same sense often associated with accusations of witchcraft centuries earlier. Others reported something even stranger: the kitchen. Employees working late shifts claimed that pots and pans would move on their own, clattering loudly, even when no one was present. In one account, from the 1970s, a cook swore he saw a heavy iron pan slide across the stove by itself, as though pushed by invisible hands. He quit the next day. Today, the Palmer House still operates as a hotel and restaurant. Visitors come for food, but many stay for another reason. Late at night, guests sometimes wake up to the sound of soft footsteps outside of their rooms. Some open their doors, expecting to see another guest, but the hallway is empty. And occasionally, just occasionally, someone claims to see the shadow of a woman slowly passing down the corridor, as though she is still walking the halls of the place she once called home. The ghost ship of the Connecticut River. For centuries, sailors along the Connecticut River have told a story that sounds more like something from a nightmare than a navigational log. A story about a burning ship that appears when no ship should be there at all. The legend dates back to the 1600s, during the earliest colonial settlements in New England. At the time, the Connecticut River was a major travel route, a highway of water cutting through forests and settlements. But one night, according to early records and local folklore, something terrifying appeared on the river. Witnesses described a ship fully engulfed in flames, drifting silently through the darkness. No screams, no crew, just a blazing vessel floating against the current. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it vanished. At first, many believed it was simply a real shipwreck seen from a distance. But the sightings didn't stop. Over the following decades, the phantom ship appeared again and again, always at night, always burning, and always disappearing without a trace. Farmers working near the river reported seeing the glowing flames reflecting off the water. Fishermen claimed they heard the crackling of burning wood drifting across the riverbank. But when they went to investigate, nothing was there. One of the most chilling sightings reportedly occurred in the 1800s, when several townspeople claimed to watch the burning ship drift silently down the river for nearly a mile. As they ran along the shoreline to keep up with it, the vessel suddenly collapsed into darkness and vanished completely. No smoke, no wreckage, no explanation. Even today, boaters on the Connecticut River occasionally report strange lights moving across the water late at night. Most dismiss it as fog, reflection, or imagination. But some locals believe the legend is real. A ship caught between worlds, still burning, on a river that refuses to forget it. The Curse of Dudleytown. Deep in the forest of northwestern Connecticut lies a place so famous that the locals refuse to go there after dark. The place is known as Dudleytown, but calling it a town might be generous. Today, it is little more than a forgotten clearing, hidden deep in the woods. Stone foundations scattered among towering trees, old cellar holes filled with leaves, and the faint outlines of roads that vanished nearly 2 centuries ago. Yet despite its quiet appearance, Dudleytown has earned a reputation as one of the most cursed locations in New England. The settlement began in the mid-1700s, when several colonial families moved into a narrow valley beneath Bald Mountain in what is now known as the town of Cornwall, Connecticut. These settlers hoped to build farms and raise families far from the crowded coastal towns. But the location they chose quickly proved to be a mistake. The valley received very little sunlight. The soil was rocky and poor, and harsh winter winds funneled through the mountains. Even in good years, survival there was difficult. Still, the families pushed forward. Homes were built. Fields were cleared. Livestock were raised. For a time, Dudleytown looked like it might succeed. But then, the tragedies began. One of the earliest legends surrounding the settlement involves the Dudley family, whose name would later become tied to the area. According to local folklore, the Dudley lineage carried a dark history dating back to England. In the 1500s, a man named Edmund Dudley served under King Henry VII. After the king died, Edmund Dudley was accused of corruption and executed. Some later storytellers claimed that members of the Dudley family believed their bloodline had been cursed after this event. While historians debate whether this legend has any real connection to the Connecticut settlement, the story would later become an important part of the Dudleytown folklore. As the years passed, strange tragedies seemed to follow the residents of Dudleytown. Several families experienced sudden deaths that were never clearly explained. Farming accidents were common. Illnesses swept through households. But what truly fueled the legend were the stories of madness. One account describes a resident who abruptly lost his sanity, screaming that unforeseen forces were stalking him through the woods. He reportedly ran into the forest and disappeared. Another story tells of a man who murdered members of his own family before vanishing into the wilderness. Whether these accounts are exaggerated or not, they became part of the growing belief that something about the valley itself was wrong. By the early 1800s, the settlement began to collapse. Families slowly moved away in search of better farmland. The harsh conditions simply made life there too difficult. One by one, homes were abandoned. Fields returned to the wilderness. Roads disappeared back to forest. By the middle of the 19th century, Dudleytown had effectively vanished. All that remained were a handful of stone foundations and a growing collection of strange stories. The legend might have ended there. But in the early 1900s, new tragedies began to be linked to Dudleyville. One of the most frequently reported stories involves a man named Dr. William Clark. Dr. Clark was reportedly a respected physician who purchased land near the abandoned settlement in the early 20th century. Soon after moving there, tragedy struck. His wife died under mysterious circumstances. Overcome with grief, Dr. Clark eventually lost his sanity and was later confined to a mental institution. For believers in the curse, this was proof that the valley's dark influence had never disappeared. As the legend spread, the ruins began attracting curious visitors. Hikers, paranormal investigators, and thrill seekers all attempted to explore the forgotten settlement. Many of them reported strange experiences. Some described a sudden sense of dread as they approached the clearing. Others claimed the forest seemed unnaturally quiet. A few visitors reported hearing whispers in the trees, even when no one else was nearby. There were also stories of shadowy figures moving between the trunks of trees, watching silently before vanishing into darkness. Perhaps the most common report was the feeling that something in the woods did not want visitors there. Today, Dudleytown sits on private land and is heavily protected. The property is owned by an organization dedicated to preserving the forest and preventing trespassing. No tours are allowed. No ghost hunts are permitted. Visitors attempting to reach the ruins are often turned away quickly. Some say the restrictions are meant to protect the fragile environment. Others believe the owners simply grew tired of paranormal thrill seekers wandering through the woods. Either way, Dudleytown remains largely inaccessible. And perhaps that mystery only fuels the legend. So what truly happened in Dudleytown? Many historians say the answer is far less supernatural. The valley was simply a terrible place to build a town. Poor soil, brutal winters, and geographic isolation likely doomed the settlement from the start. But the legends have a way of growing stronger over time, and the stories surrounding Dudleytown have been passed down through generations in Connecticut. Stories of madness, of tragedy, of a valley that seemed to swallow an entire community. Today, if you stand somewhere in the forest near the old settlement, you won't see much. Just trees, stone ruins, and the quiet remains of a forgotten town. But according to local folklore, something still lingers in that valley below the mountains. And if the stories are true, whatever drove the people of Dudleytown away may still be there. The quarantine. The announcement came during lunch period. Principal Hendricks interrupted the cafeteria broadcast to inform us that the school was implementing immediate lockdown protocols. No explanation. Just, all students remain in your current location. No movement between areas. This is not a drill. I was sitting with my best friend Alex when it happened. We both froze, forks suspended halfway to our mouths. "What the hell?" Alex asked. Around us, the cafeteria erupted into nervous chatter. Some kids laughed nervously. Others looked genuinely scared. Teachers positioned themselves by exits, not to prevent us from leaving, but to prevent something from coming in. That's when I knew it was serious. My name is Jamie Chen, and I'm 16. I live in Bluffington, New York, a normal small town where nothing unusual ever happens until today. "Did you hear anything on the news this morning?" Alex asked me. "No," I said. "My mom was rushing to get to work. She didn't mention anything." An announcement came through the loudspeaker again. Miss Patterson, the school nurse, speaking in a controlled voice. "Students, remain calm. We are implementing enhanced safety protocols. No one will be permitted to leave the school until further notice. Parents will be notified of pickup arrangements and hence safety protocols. That phrase meant nothing and everything simultaneously. Miss Patterson continued. If anyone is experiencing symptoms, fever, cough, difficulty breathing, please report to the nurse's office immediately. This is critical. Symptoms. Symptoms of what? Alex asked. Nobody answered, because nobody knew. The next 3 hours were chaos. Teachers tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy, keeping us in classrooms, but there was no actual teaching. Everyone was on their phones, trying to figure out what was happening. The Wi-Fi was working, but overwhelmed. News sites were barely loading. When they did, it was worse than the silence. Emergency quarantine declared in 3 states. Viral outbreaks spreading rapidly. Stay indoors. Avoid contact. The articles were vague and terrifying in equal measure. Something was spreading. Something fast. Something that was causing governments to lock down entire regions. Around 2 p.m., they started moving students into the gym. They said it was temporary, that parents would be arriving soon to pick us up, but I could see the doubt in the teachers' faces. That's when I noticed something wrong with Mr. Peterson. He was a chemistry teacher who'd always seemed normal enough. Tall, thin, always talked about his garden. He was standing near the gymnasium entrance, and something about his posture was off. His movements were jerky, deliberate, like someone learning how to use their body. Hey, I nudged Alex. Look at Peterson. Alex glanced over. What about him? He looks, I don't know, weird. We watched as Peterson walked to the gymnasium entrance and stood there, staring at nothing. Just staring. His jaw slightly open. His breathing was audible from where we were standing. A wet rattling sound that made my skin crawl. Jamie, you're being paranoid, Alex said, but she was watching him too. Then Peterson turned his head toward us. Not like he heard something. Like his head was on a rotating mechanical hinge. His eyes found ours, and he stared. Not at us. Through us. Like we weren't even there. I pulled Alex away. That's definitely weird, she admitted. Parents did not arrive. By 6 p.m., it was clear that something had changed. The school made an announcement that nobody would be leaving. They were setting up cots in the gymnasium. They had food. We would be safe here until the situation was resolved. Resolved? Alex asked. Resolved how? Nobody answered. Around 7 p.m., the first infected person tried to get into the school. We heard the commotion from the gymnasium. Shouting, screaming, something heavy hitting a door repeatedly. Teachers rushed toward the sound. Some tried to keep us back. Others just froze. Alex and I, along with maybe a dozen other students, crept toward the sounds. We peered through the small window in the gymnasium entrance door. There was a man outside, beyond the glass. He was banging against the entrance with his fists. His skin had a grayish tint. Not sick pale, but actually gray. Like all the color had been drained from him. His eyes were bloodshot, the whites completely crimson. He was making sounds. Not words, just these wet, gurgling noises, and his mouth was moving even when no sounds came out. Chewing motions. "Oh God," I whispered. Principal Hendricks was on the radio, voice tense. "Close all exterior doors. Now, lock them down. Do not allow anyone inside." The man outside stopped banging. He tilted his head, and I saw his neck rotate almost fully around, like his spine had become rubber. He looked directly at us through the window. He smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. His lips pulled back too far. His teeth were wrong, discolored, with gaps where some had fallen out, and there was something dark in the corners of his mouth. Blood, maybe something worse. Then the other teachers pulled us away. "Back to the gymnasium," Principal Hendricks said, his voice shaking slightly. "Now, everyone." We moved, but slowly. Everyone had seen the infected person. Everyone had seen that smile. Alex gripped my arm so tightly she cut off the circulation. "What was that?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said. But I had a terrible suspicion. By morning, the situation had gotten worse. More infected people had arrived at the school during the night. Teachers wouldn't let us watch, but we could hear the sounds. Banging, scratching, that wet gurgling vocalization repeated over and over. And around dawn, there was screaming. Not infected screaming, human screaming. It came from somewhere in the building, high-pitched, desperate. Then it stopped. Just stopped. Principal Hendricks called all the staff together in the office. We could see them through the glass, arguing, voices raised. He was on the phone with someone in the state government. We could only hear his side of the conversation. "Yes, I understand the situation. No, we have adequate supplies. What do you mean we're not authorized for evacuation? For how long? You don't know?" He hung up the phone and looked like he aged 10 years in a single conversation. When he addressed us, his voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Students, I need to be honest with you. The situation in our state is critical. A viral outbreak has spread rapidly through the population. Infected individuals are showing signs of severe behavioral changes and aggression. Until we have clarity on containment protocols, our school will remain in lockdown. We have supplies. We have shelter. We are safe inside these walls." "What happened to Mr. Peterson?" someone asked. Hendrick's expression flickered. "We're not sure. He showed symptoms this morning, and we've isolated him." But that wasn't the full truth. We found out later that Peterson had been locked in the school library. He had been banging on windows, making those horrible noises, until someone finally sedated him. They used drugs meant for medical emergencies. It worked temporarily, but everyone knew it was temporary. The infected population outside grew throughout the day. By afternoon, there were easily 30 of them surrounding the school. They moved with the same jerky, deliberate quality. No coordination, no strategy, just this constant, low-level aggression. Testing the doors, pressing against the windows, making those wet, gurgling sounds. Some of them I recognized. Miss Patterson, the nurse, the one who had given the announcement about symptoms, she was out there, moving with that same unnatural gait, her uniform stained with something dark. She kept touching her own neck, like she was trying to reach something inside. Mr. Jameson, from the math department, a student named Derek Martinez, from the junior class. People we'd seen every day, now transformed into something else. "This is insane," Alex said. We were watching from a classroom window on the second floor. The infected were slowly circling the building. "These are people we know." "They're not anymore," I said. "Whatever happened to them, they're not people anymore." The food situation became apparent on day 3. There was not enough. Not for 300 students and 40 staff members. Hendricks had calculated portions to stretch for about 2 weeks. After that, we'd be on emergency rations. After that, he didn't finish the thought. Alex was handling the stress differently than I was. While I was trying to observe everything, to understand the situation, Alex was becoming anxious. She stopped eating. She barely slept. On the 3rd night, I found her crying in the bathroom. "My mom," she said when I asked. "I don't know if she's okay. She works downtown. If this thing is spreading, and she's downtown..." She couldn't finish. I sat with her on the bathroom floor for an hour, not saying anything, because there was nothing to say. Her mom might be fine. Her mom might be dead. Her mom might be out there right now, one of those things pressing against the school's doors. "We're getting out of here," I said finally, even though I didn't believe it. "How?" Alex asked. On day 5, someone tried to escape. A junior named Marcus decided he was going to leave. He had enough of confinement. His family lived nearby. He was going to walk home. Teachers tried to stop him, but he made it to a side exit. He was strong, determined. He got to the door, opened it, and stepped outside. The infected reached him in seconds. They came from around the corner of the building. 3 of them, including Mr. Jameson. They moved with surprising speed, and Marcus didn't stand a chance. He tried to run. He made it maybe 20 feet before they got him. Some of us watched from the windows. Some heard the screaming and refused to look. It was fast. Too fast. Marcus disappeared under a pile of infected bodies. When they moved away, he wasn't moving. They didn't eat him. Not in the traditional sense. They were extracting something from him, consuming it. I looked away. Alex grabbed my hand, and her grip was so tight I thought she might break my fingers. When it was over, the infected just left him. His body lay there on the grass, and they moved on to test the doors again, like the attack had satisfied some immediate hunger, but nothing more. On day 7, Peterson died. Or maybe he didn't die. Maybe something else happened. Something we didn't have a word for. He had been locked in the library, sedated on a regular schedule, but his body was changing. The grayish tone to his skin was spreading. His skin developed a waxy quality. His movements became more slow and more deliberate. And then one morning, during a scheduled check, the staff found him unresponsive. They tried to revive him. CPR, medications. Nothing worked. Principal Hendricks made the decision to lock the library completely. Nobody goes in. The body stays there. We'll deal with it when the situation is resolved. But I kept thinking about what we'd seen outside. Those infected people. They weren't moving like they were in pain. They weren't moving like they were dying. They were moving like they were transforming into something else. And Peterson was in the process of that transformation. What happened when he finished? Around day 9, people started getting sick inside the school. A kid named David came down with a fever. Then a teacher named Miss Chen. and then 3 more students within hours. Hendricks tried to isolate them, setting up a quarantine area in one of the classroom wings. But fear was spreading faster than ever. "It's here," someone whispered. "It's already inside." There was panic in the gymnasium that night. Some students tried to leave. Others refused to go near the infected kids. Teachers tried to maintain order, but it was fragmenting. Alex found me in the darkness of the gymnasium around 2 a.m. "We should leave," she said. "We can't," I said. "We have to. This place is going to fall apart, and when it does..." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. "Where would we go?" I asked. "It's everywhere." "I don't know," she said, "but not here." On day 11, we found out how the infection actually spreads. One of the 6 students, Jeremy, started behaving strangely. He was running a fever. That was clear. But beyond that, he was exhibiting the same behavioral changes as the infected outside. Jerky movements, that wet gurgling sound in his throat. And then, Mrs. Chen, the other infected teacher, stopped trying to resist. She stood up in the quarantine area and began walking toward the gymnasium. Not slowly, walking like she had a destination, like she knew exactly where she was going. Teachers tried to stop her. She fought them with surprising strength, and when she did, when they were struggling with her, when she was thrashing and making those horrible sounds, she bit someone. A teacher named Mr. Sullivan. Just bit him on the arm, broke the skin, drew blood, and in that moment, I understood. It wasn't airborne. It wasn't from proximity. It was fluid transmission. Blood, saliva, contact with the infected. It was vampire adjacent, but without the supernatural element. Just pure biological infection. Mr. Sullivan backed away from Mrs. Chen, looking at his arm like he couldn't quite process what had happened. Then he looked at his blood, and something in his expression changed, like he already knew what came next. The school descended into chaos within hours. Some students rioted. Some tried to break out. Some just sat and waited for whatever was coming. Teachers tried to maintain control, but were outnumbered and increasingly hopeless. Hendricks made a decision. He was going to try and call for external help. He would climb to the roof, get signal, and contact the state authorities for emergency evacuation. "I'm going with him," Alex announced. "That's suicide," I said. "Staying here is suicide," she replied. I wanted to argue with her. I wanted to tell her to stay safe, to wait it out, that help would come, but I knew she was right. So I went with her. Getting to the roof meant navigating through the 2nd floor, where the infected students and teachers were being held. Hendricks had a key. He was leading the way, moving carefully and quietly. Alex was next to me, and we could both hear the infected making their sounds through the closed doors. That wet, rattling vocalization, the scratching of nails against walls. We were maybe 13 feet from the stairwell when one of the doors opened. Not violently, just opened. Jeremy stepped out, or what was left of Jeremy. His skin had taken on that grayish quality now. His eyes were still mostly his own, but they were bloodshot. His movements were that jerky, deliberate thing. He looked at us, and I watched as understanding flickered across his face. Some part of him was still there. Some part of Jeremy was aware of what was happening, aware of what he had become, aware that he wanted to hurt us. He lunged. Hendricks pushed Alex out of the way. Jeremy crashed into him, and they both went down. I could see Hendrix trying to protect himself, but Jeremy's fingers were clawing at his face, his jaw snapping, trying to bite. "Go!" Hendrix screamed. "Go!" We ran. I grabbed Alex's hand and we sprinted for the stairwell. Behind us, I could hear the sounds, intensifying, more infected emerging from the rooms, drawn by the commotion. We made it to the stairs and started climbing. The stairwell was echoing with sounds from below, sounds of struggling, sounds of infection, sounds of transformation acceleration. The roof was quiet, almost peaceful except for the scene surrounding us. The infected had congregated directly below the school, dozens of them now, pressed against the walls, scratching and banging in their mindless, persistent way. They looked up when the door opened, but they seemed unable or unwilling to climb the fire escape to reach us. Hendrix's radio crackled with static. Alex tried her phone. No signal. "Try higher," I suggested, pointing toward the roof's edge. We moved to the highest point of the building. The town spread out below us, and what I saw made my chest tighten. The streets were full. Not just full, overflowing. Infected people walking in that same jerky, deliberate way. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, moving slowly through the residential neighborhoods, apparently aimless but somehow methodical. And smoke rising from multiple locations across town. "Oh God," Alex whispered. Hendrix raised his radio and tried again. "Any emergency services? This is Bluffington High School. We have a situation. We need immediate evacuation. Can anyone hear us?" Static. He tried again. And again. Nothing. Finally, a voice crackled through. "Bluffington High, this is the State Emergency Operations. All evacuation services are currently engaged. Your location is not a priority. Remain in your facility and maintain order. Military intervention is being planned, but is at least 48 hours out." 48 hours. In the gymnasium, we had maybe 5 days of food, maybe 8 with severe rationing, and that was assuming the infection didn't spread further inside, assuming people didn't completely panic, assuming we could maintain any semblance of organization. 48 hours felt like forever, and no time at all. We made it back downstairs without encountering more infected, though it was close. The school had become something else entirely. It was a shelter now, a cage, a slowly filling vessel of people and contagion, all pressed together, waiting. The news from the roof had spread quickly. Some people broke down. Others became angry. A few of a small group led by a senior named Thomas started talking about taking supplies and leaving through the woods. "If they're concentrated on the roads, we can go around them," Thomas argued. "You saw how many there are," someone countered. "You can't go around that." "Staying here is definitely death," Thomas said. "At least outside, there's a chance." Hendrix didn't try to stop the group that left late that night. He just unlocked the side door and let them go. We watched from a window as they moved into the darkness. Thomas, 6 other students, and 2 teachers. Nobody came back. By day 13, the school was subdividing. The infected, which now numbered about 15, were being held in the West Wing. The staff was trying to monitor them, but it was clear that prevention was impossible. The virus was progressing predictably in all of them. Fever, behavioral changes, transformation. The uninfected, numbering around 280, were in the gymnasium and surrounding classrooms, and supplies were running desperately short. Fights started over food. Nothing organized, just desperate arguments that occasionally turned physical. A sophomore pulled a knife during a dispute over protein bars. A teacher had to physically intervene. Alex and I tried to stay neutral, tried to be invisible. We gathered in the corner of the gymnasium with a few other kids who weren't trying to stockpile resources or start riots. One of them was a girl named Myra. She was quiet, kept to herself, but she was also studying people, watching, analyzing. "He's going to call it," Myra said one evening, gesturing toward Hendricks, who was conferring with the staff in the gymnasium. "He's going to make the decision soon." "What decision?" I asked. "How to manage the infected," Myra said simply. "Right now they're alive, but they're not going to stay that way, and he knows it. And he knows that mercy versus cruelty is definitely going to define what happens next." She was right. On day 14, Hendricks called a meeting. "We need to discuss the infected students and staff," he said. His voice was measured but exhausted. "They're progressing through the infection stages. Within 72 hours, they'll likely become fully transformed. At that point, they may become a danger to themselves and others." He paused. "I'm open to discussing about how we manage the situation. I want input from the student body." The responses range from compassionate to brutal. Some people want to keep them alive. Others want to lock them completely away. A few, mostly Thomas's former allies, suggested a more permanent solution. "We could seal the wing," someone suggested. "Let them starve." "That's not a solution," a girl named Emma said. She'd been relatively quiet throughout the entire confinement. "That's torture. If we're going to do this, we do it humanely." "Humanely?" Someone laughed bitterly. "They're not human anymore." "They were," Emma said. "And they still might have some awareness. We don't know." In the end, Hendricks made the decision himself. The infected would be moved to the library. The doors would be locked and sealed. They'd be given what medical support could be provided, and when the time came, someone would administer medication to ensure a peaceful transition. Some people called it mercy. Others called it murder. Alex called it necessary. I just called it sad. On day 16, there was a break in the radio signals. Military had arrived on the outer perimeter of town. Limited evacuation was being authorized in 3 days. 3 days for 300 people to prepare to be extracted from the school and relocated to a regional quarantine facility. The news itself should have brought relief. Instead, it brought urgency and desperation. People began fighting over who would get evacuation slots. Hendricks tried to establish a system. Children and teenagers first, then staff. But people had families. Some people didn't want to be separated. And some people realized that escape might mean something different than they'd hoped. "It's not escape," a teacher named Mrs. Lee said bitterly. "It's relocation. We're just being moved from one quarantine to another." She wasn't wrong. The radio messages were clear. Infected regions were being isolated. Military was establishing perimeters. Nobody was really escaping the infection. We were just being moved away from it. On day 17, the infected in the library began their transition. The sounds they made were horrible. Not the wet, gurgling vocalizations anymore. Different. Lower. More animalistic. Like something was being torn apart from the inside. Hendricks went in with the physician and 2 staff members. He emerged 30 minutes later, looking like someone who'd lost something fundamental. I didn't ask what he had seen. The evacuation began on day 18. Buses arrived with military escorts. Students were called up by name, assigned to vehicles, transported to a facility 20 miles outside of town. Teachers went last. Some people refused to go, preferring to take their chances on their own. Alex and I were on the second bus out. We watched through the window as we drove away, past infected people wandering the streets and military personnel in full protective gear, moving through the neighborhoods methodically. "Where do you think they're going?" Alex asked, watching the infected. "I don't know," I said. "Somewhere. Anywhere. Just walking." The quarantine facility wasn't like the school. It was military, controlled and cold. We were assigned rooms and meal times, and told to stay until the infection was contained. How long, I asked. Unknown, the staff member said. Weeks, months, maybe longer. That night, Alex and I sat in the fenced-in courtyard, watching the infected move along the perimeter, unable to get in. Do you think they're still in there? Alex asked. I remembered Jeremy's eyes on the stairs, aware, but not himself. Some part of them is, I said, and that's the worst part. Later the news came. The infection was spreading around the region. Cities were building shelters. The military was expanding quarantines. How long until there's a cure? Someone asked a technician. Years, she said. Months passed. Life in the facility became routine. When Hendricks visited, he told us the truth. Most students survived the school, but far fewer survived the town. The infection is still growing, and containment wouldn't last forever. Now we wait behind fences, watching the infected move outside. Every night I think about Jeremy and what happens when the fence finally comes down. Not if, when.
Woo! Oh my goodness. That was like so much reading, y'all. Anyways, thank you again for hanging out with me for another Sinister Radio broadcast. I am your host, Raz, and it has been an absolute pleasure entertaining you tonight, and I sure hope to see you again next weekend. Until then, sleep well, my creepy little nightmares. Good night.